Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the DFO Fantasy Show. It is October the 9th. I hope everyone's enjoyed the early action. The NHL had some really good games last night. Our boy Pavel Dorofeyev with a hat trick to start the season. Love to see that. Today, we're going to have our usual co-host, Dylan Berthium, join us. We're going to take a look at the weekend. Every Thursday, we're going to preview the weekend, go over the best weekend streaming options. This weekend is a little weird. There's no games on Friday. And then just one game on Sunday. So the weekend streaming options are extremely limited. So what we're going to do, because obviously, you're not going to want to waste a bunch of pickups this week. Let's just look ahead to next week as well. Get you prepped for next week, and you can spend some of your ads this week on next week and save yourself a couple ads for next week. So that's what we're going to do. But before we do that, let's get into the news and notes really quickly. The first news of the day, we've got the Oilers, who had a disappointing loss last night, signed Jack Roslovic to a one-year deal worth $1.5 million. So obviously, they've got a lot of young talent on that roster. It'll be interesting to see where Roslovic fits in. If he's somebody that could potentially play in that top six this season, he could certainly find himself with some fantasy value. Next, we've got Brandon Montour, who had an off-season ankle surgery. It was minor surgery. He's only been out for a couple of weeks. He will be a game-time decision on Thursday. It sounds likely that he will play, but he is a game-time decision, obviously, with some of the injuries, including Riker Evans, that the Kraken are dealing with. Obviously, getting Brandon Montour back to start the season would be helpful. Next, we've got Ryan Strome. Not obviously super fantasy relevant. He's going to miss the Ducks' first two games of the season, but how that kind of impacts fantasy is, especially in like keeper dynasty leagues, Beckett Seneke is going to move up into the top six. He's also going to see power play 2 time to start the season. So that's going to be super interesting to see how he kind of acclimates to the NHL early on. He was slated to play on the fourth line, but with Strome out, it moved Mikael Granlund, to back to center, and Bennett Seneke getting bump up into the top six. Will be fun to see what he can do early in his NHL career. Next, we've got Drake Batherson. He's going to miss the Senators season opener on Thursday, but he hasn't been ruled out for Saturday. So if you drafted Batherson and we're worried about how long he could be sidelined, it does not sound like it's going to be long term. Might miss a game or two. And lastly, for the Buffalo Sabres, Owen Power, who was banged up towards the end of training camp. He's been participating in practice the last couple of days. He was on power play 2 the other day, which is a clear indication that he is going to be available. And Matthias Samuelsson, who has missed a lot of training camp, returned towards the end. Both of them are expected to be available for the Sabres season openers. So obviously that was looking like a blue line that was going to be extremely thin to start the season, but Power and Samuelsson looking like they are good to go. So that's it for the news and notes for today. Now let's welcome in our guy Dylan Berthium and take a quick look at the weekend strength of schedule.
Brock, what's up, brother?
Not much. Not the best way to start the season for the weekend streaming segment. Obviously, pretty thin. Not going to be picking up anybody to play on Saturday, considering there are 16 games on Saturday. So no games on Friday, which is a little bit surprising to start the season. One game on Sunday, and that is the Washington Capitals and the New York Rangers in New York. So let's just talk about that game. Who are you targeting in the, it could matter. It could be the one game that pushes you over the top at the end of the week.
Sure. Yeah, it's kind of interesting because I don't, usually like this close to the draft, the bottom of my roster is kind of filled with flyers that I took late and maybe still want to see a little bit more out of, but certainly can make the difference at the end of the season, especially if you're in, one-win matchup leagues, to secure that win if you can and chase maybe a couple of extra categories. And that's probably the route you're going to have to go. It's going to be hard to find some reliable raw production on the wire, which is one game going on Sunday. But on the Rangers side, Will Cooley is available in 55% of leagues. I think he's most likely gone in banger leagues. That's where most of his value comes from. But in standard scoring formats, might be available for you to stash ahead of that game on Sunday. Currently riding on the first line with JT Miller and Mika Zibanejad. Otherwise, I think you're looking at Alexis Lafreniere at 33%, line 2 with Panarin and Trocheck, second power play. And, we're going to have to get messy here if we're really desperate. Connor Sheary, line 3, power play 2, 0% owned. And then at 1%, I think you can get real crazy in banger leagues and roll Matt Rempe out there. Obviously, PIMS leagues as well. Line 4, of course, but believe it or not, seen some power play 2 time being camped out in front of the net. And then on the flip side of this matchup, Connor McMichael is the obvious target for the Capitals, 32% owned, currently slotting in on line 2 and power play 2, played 15 minutes in Washington's opening game on Wednesday. I think Ryan Leonard could be worth a flyer as well. Bottom 6 role right now, but is on power play 2. highly touted prospect, obviously. Held off the score sheet in his season debut, but did log 3 shots and 1 hit in just over 13 minutes of action. And I think really that's the only reliable sources of any kind of production that can be found in terms of raw production. But you can look to the blue line if you're going to chase some of those extra categories, as I was kind of alluded to earlier. At least as, widely available players are concerned, that's kind of what we're limited to at this point. Rasmus Sandin on power play 2. Long shot to find the score sheet, but could fill some of those other categories for you as well. And then if you're chasing hits or block shots, I think Matt Roy and Martin Fehervary are viable options. All three of those blue liners under 3% owned.
I think that's got to be the first time in the 11 years of this show that Martin Fehervary has been mentioned, maybe even Matt Roy to some extent. But yeah, options extremely limited, without a doubt. And, I talked about a lot of these players on Monday because obviously on Sunday was like one of the only light nights of the week. And I said the same thing. Like, you don't want to be dropping players that you drafted for high upside just to maybe secure a win week 1. It's probably not worth it. You might only get one game out of these guys to see what they've really got. So I don't think you need to be dropping players that you put high stock in to pick up Martin Fehervary to secure the win. But if you've got that open roster spot, if you've got somebody on IR, certainly make use of these pickups and try to secure the W week 1. But one thing we can certainly focus on is trying to secure the W for week 2. So let's pull up next week's strength of schedule. So if you're unfamiliar, or you've never seen the DFO fantasy strength of schedule, how it works, first and foremost, you need to play a lot of games. So most games is important. Next, you need to be playing a lot of games on nights where not a lot of teams are playing. So we consider a light night a night where there are 8 games or fewer. So next week's pretty spread out. Like, you still might have an open roster spot on Monday with 10 games, potentially Thursday with 11, but chances are relatively slim. So 8 games or fewer is considered a light night. We want a lot of games, we want a lot of light nights, and we want to be playing easy opponents. So then that's the third factor, the average opponent rating there. The higher the opponent rating, the worse they are defensively. So the teams that we're going to focus on today, the Edmonton Oilers, Tampa Bay Lightning, and Vancouver Canucks have the 3 best schedules. They each have 4 games. They each have 2 light nights, and at least the Oilers and the Lightning have quite easy schedules. Not the easiest, but quite easy. Vancouver's is a little bit trickier. Matchups with St. Louis, Dallas, and Washington aren't necessarily ideal, but not terrible either. And then the other 2 teams we're going to focus on are Utah and Toronto. Utah has the easiest of the schedules next week. They got Chicago, they got Calgary, they got San Jose, and they got Boston. I mean, it doesn't get much easier than that. Really, really nice matchups for them. But they only have 1 light night game. But again, one of those games is on Monday. So there's a chance that you'll be able to consider that a light night depending on your lineup. Other than that, Toronto, pretty easy matchup as well. They got Detroit, Nashville, Rangers, and Seattle. So nice schedule for those 5 teams. So those are the 5 we are going to focus on. And D, I'll give you the floor because I'm going to dive into this strength of schedule even, at more depth starting on Monday. So I'll give you the floor today. We'll go over the line combinations and find some of your favorite streaming candidates that you could pick up this week. So let's pull up the Oilers line combinations here. We'll start with them as they have the friendliest of the schedules this week.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you're streaming Oiler players, your attention should always first turn to who's playing with McDavid, and in this case, McDavid and Draisaitl. So Trent Frederic didn't get it done on opening night, but he did play just under 17 minutes with the 2 of them. Didn't, like I said, do too much, didn't even log a shot, but if he's going to be in that spot, I think he's worth the roll of the dice on any given night, just 21% owned. Mangiapane found the back of the net. Nugent Hopkins looked really good the other night, so I think even at 5v5, Mangiapane could offer a little bit of upside as well, just 9% owned. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a bit of a revolving door on that last spot on the first line. We saw David Tomashik see a lot of run there in the preseason. He looked pretty good. Opening night had an assist, 3 shots on net, just over 13 minutes of ice time. Even saw some, I think it was in overtime, they had the 4-on-3 power play, and it was McDavid, Draisaitl, Bouchard, and Tomashik to open it up there. So would not be surprised to see him get some more run at the top of the lineup. He's just 1% owned, so definitely a name to keep an eye on. And then I think Jack Roslovic too, obviously not in the picture here yet, but would expect that, there was a lot of talk about how he was staying in shape, working out on the ice, obviously with, this delayed into the season before he finally signs a contract. So where he fits in this lineup will be interesting to see exactly when he slots in. So keep an eye on DFO for that. But I think he's going to be a player in this top 6 and someone to keep an eye on as soon as he is made available.
Yeah, the Frederick McDavid Draisaitl line had a pretty good night. Obviously, Frederick didn't get it done, but especially in banger league, somebody that is going to be super interesting. And Tomashik is a player that I was expecting, really, really good numbers in, overseas last year, and somebody that's a little bit older that could continue to get the job done, especially in that net front role while Zach Hyman is out. Tampa Bay's next.
Yeah, haven't played a game yet, so we'll see how their game goes against the Senators tonight. But obviously, a lot to go off of with Cirelli and Brendan Hagel, assuming Hagel's good to go for opening night here. But Cirelli just 22% owned. Proved it last year. Doesn't need a ton of power play time to really be productive. One of the better 5v5 players in the NHL. So even at straight center eligible with this schedule, I think he makes a lot of sense next week. And then otherwise, I'm really just looking at Oliver Bjorkstrand is on that top power play unit. So that could be a really steady source of production. I think that one's maybe a little bit more fluid. Obviously, Cirelli locked in on that second line pivot with Hagel. They rolled that most of last season. So Bjorkstrand, I would keep an eye on kind of game to game. Make sure you're still seeing time on that first power play unit, because I think there's other options, Brendan Hagel being the more obvious one. So if Bjorkstrand can hang on to that spot, though, just 10% owned, I think he makes a lot of sense and could potentially, obviously fill the score sheet on any given night playing in that spot.
Yeah, I don't know if he's necessarily a great streaming option this week, but I think a name to keep an eye on this year is Gage Gonsalves. Obviously, he's on power play too. He's going to start the year with Cirelli and Hagel. It's a trio that had some really nice underlying metrics a season ago. He is a second round pick from 2020. He's put up really, really good numbers in the AHL. Just still trying to get his feet wet here. He had 20 points in 60 NHL games last year. So in deeper leagues, I think he's a name to monitor moving forward and see how things click early in the season. But yeah, I don't think, I would definitely prefer Cirelli and Bjorkstrand this early in the season. Let's move on to the third team. We've got the Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah, another couple of names here. I think the obvious one is Jake DeBrusk at 30% owned, left wing, right wing eligible, put up 28 goals, 171 shots on goal last year, even threw in 96 hits, and kind of poised to see really similar production this season, I think, on that top line, on the top power play unit. So he's one of the better streaming targets of the week for me if he is available. And then Evander Kane, kind of an interesting one, should see a lot of power play time. Obviously, has been a really good source of hits in banger leagues over the last few seasons, not including the entire season he missed last year. But historically, that's where he brings a lot of value. But I think even in standard scoring leagues as a streamer could make a lot of sense. And those are probably the leagues that you're most likely to find him. And then Connor Garland, I know he's on the second power play, second line right now, so not in the best spot, but just last year just got a ton of run on that second line and the second power play unit. Was flirting with 60 or 50 points rather. So I think he makes a lot of sense and could be a guy that in deeper leagues, just 7% owned, could potentially add to your raw production totals next week.
Yeah, super interested to see how Evander Kane looks in Vancouver. Getting a really good look early in the season, going to be on that top power play unit, going to be in the top six. Jake DeBrusk obviously makes a lot of sense. And one other name I think is in deeper leagues is Jonathan Lecknermacki. Really good shot, scored 19 goals in just 36 AHL games last year. Going to be a guy that's kind of heavily featured on that second power play unit. But yeah, after skating in the top six throughout the majority of training camp and looking like a guy that might have, have a breakout season coming up, buried kind of on that third line to start things off. So that is your Vancouver Canucks. Now, a team that we talked about a ton in the preseason, the Utah Mammoth. We expect big things. Obviously, a lot of their big guns are already highly owned, D, but who are you looking at on the Utah Mammoth?
Yeah, listeners of the podcast won't be surprised to see a Nick Schmaltz shout out here, 30% owned, one of the more underrated raw production assets in fantasy hockey over the last few seasons. Put up 63 points last year, 20 goals, 43 assists. Shots on goal totals have really risen the last few years as well, making those, kind of low 20 goal totals all that more reliable. I think that's where he settles in again this year. So just a really good source of assists that you could find across most waiver wires, just 30% owned. And then I think if we're going a little deeper, Jack McBain in this spot, centering Keller and Schmaltz, I think he makes a lot of sense. Doesn't have a great track record in terms of racking up the raw production, but it is a really great source of hits in banger leagues as well. Had 291 last season, also seen time on the second power play unit. So if you're in banger leagues, I think he's the guy that's got the off chance of picking up a point or two next week while also helping fill that hits category.
Yeah, it's like you watched yesterday's show. One of my top pickups for this week or for next week, just moving forward, is Nick Schmaltz. It's basically just that time of year where he always seems to get drafted and then drop right after the draft. He always seems like the most expendable name on a roster. And then Jack McBain, just an absolute banger league, hero But if he has the opportunity to potentially unlock some more offensive production here in that top six, it could be a nice banger league asset for sure. And the final team, you've got your Toronto Maple Leafs D. Looks pretty good on opening night. Who are you targeting after watching one game so far?
My boy, Matthias Michelli looked pretty good on that top line. I think he flashed what makes him so good and also so frustrating, a little bit soft on the puck. A little bit lost in his defensive zone at times, but when he does have time and space to make a play, he was creating a lot of opportunities for his teammates out there and ended up getting the one assist on the Morgan Riley game winner. I think if he's in that spot, like he is really going to be a steady source of assists, however long he's on that top line with Matthews and Nyes. Second power play unit as well, kind of almost like the de facto quarterback of that second unit when he was out there. So really interesting name, a lot of high-end offensive talent, but like I said, there's some obvious pitfalls to his game. So be interesting to see how long he sticks on that top line. I think, offensively it makes a lot of sense, but those other concerns I think are going to come into play, maybe more so when the Leafs are on the road. So I wouldn't, and they don't, control the matchup. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Michelli kind of bounce in and off that top line. But as long as he's on the top line, I think he's a great streaming target, just 17% owned. And then my other guy, Bobby McMahon, scored the opening goal for the Leafs last night, and season ago in a limited role scored north of 20 goals while also being a really steady source of hits and shots. So he's a guy, if he sees more ice time this season, I think could offer a little bit of season long value, maybe in like 14 team leagues. I don't think you have to go down too far if he's going to be locked into this role, which this second line I see is a lot more stagnant with McMahon, Tavares, and Nylander. I think this will get a lot of run to open up the season. So yeah, I think he's going to get a lot of opportunities at second power play unit. Maybe gets a little bit more run in the short term after the top unit gave up a shorthanded goal, almost two shorthanded goals in one power play. So wouldn't be surprised if it's a little bit more split and they have to earn that dominant tilt in the ice time back. So I like Bobby McMahon a lot next week. I think he makes a lot of sense and can help you out across the board, and obviously always a goal threat.
Yeah, I think the one thing that kind of stood out yesterday was just the Maple Leafs top power play unit struggling a little bit, and I think that's probably where they're going to miss Mitch Marner the most, especially like just such a reliable, zone entry player for them for a long time, and they seem to struggle to kind of adapt to life without Mitch early on. But I think obviously as the season progresses, Bobby McMahon, 16 minutes last night, 4 hits to go along with the goal as well. So if you're in banger leagues, he looked really good. He was flying all over the ice last night. So that is going to do it for the weekend streaming targets, mostly week 2 streaming targets at this point. But that is also going to do it for the DFO Fantasy Show for this week. We are only going to be coming with an episode every other Friday. So Stephen Ellis will join us for the first one to talk about some of the, Dynasty Keeper League options. We'll be doing that every other Friday. But yeah, again, if this is the first time you've tuned into the DFO Fantasy Show, Monday, strength of schedule and streaming targets, also a weekend or like a weekend review for me on Monday. Tuesday, around the league, we welcome in guests from around the league to talk about some of the pressing issues in fantasy hockey, whether it be injuries or maybe a rookie player that's off to a hot start. Whatever it is, we will figure out something to chat about. Wednesday's Waiver Wire Wednesday with Beebs. Then always we got Dylan here on Thursdays to talk about the weekend. Hopefully things look a little bit better next weekend. What do we got? Let's take a look here. Next week we've got 4 games on Friday, 4 games on Sunday. So next week, the weekend streamer segment will be just loaded deep.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about. I think it looks like there's about 5 teams rocking that Friday to Sunday schedule too. So should be plenty of quality options to help get you over the edge next week.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Please, if you haven't already, subscribe to the DFO Fantasy Betting YouTube channel. If you play DFS, we got a live DFS show Monday through Friday with myself and Zach Lang. That goes live at 2:30. We also got betting content coming from Matthew Barnaby. So should be really fun season here. If you're not already subscribed, hit that subscribe button. Smash the like button for us as well. We'll see you guys back here on Monday.
Peace.
Thanks for watching this video. If you want more great fantasy hockey and betting content from myself, Carter Hutton, Matthew Barnaby, and the rest of the DFO analysts, make sure you subscribe to the DFO Fantasy and Betting YouTube channel today and never miss a minute.